Hello, everyone. I hope you're ready to go. If you haven't checked out Dr. Galley's channel or seen her background videos, such as her appearance at CES in Las Vegas, Nevada, be sure to take a look. You can also find the bios for all the panelists in the event or video description. Without further ado, please welcome TBW's Chief of Research, Dr. Doreen Galley.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction, Vicki. Greetings from fabulous Las Vegas. We are in the age of data and AI revolution. That means a lot of data storage and a lot of energy consumption. According to the U.S. Department of Energy, data centers consume 4.4% of the total U.S. electricity in 2023, expected to be 12% by 2026. According to Fortune Business, the data storage market is projected to grow from $255 billion this year to $774 billion in 2032, with a compounding growth rate of 17.2%. According to Precedence Research, the global IoT and energy market size is $34 billion, forecasted at $111 billion in 2034 at a compounding growth rate of 13.94. Welcome to Industry Whispers, Earth Day Technology Panel 2025 Research Code 272. Thank you to all that registered and submitted questions. This session is scheduled to be released on our channel, so be sure to subscribe and catch the premiere. As we'd like to say, the answer is always in the whispers, so let's dive in. We'll start with Colby from Storj. We first met Colby at World CryptoCon in 2019. Colby, if you could take a few minutes to introduce yourself and share what inspired you to launch Storj and what problem are you trying to solve?
Yeah, so I'm the CEO of Storj. We are a distributed cloud platform. And so we offer cloud services to a wide variety of customers, whether in AI, media and entertainment, or enterprise IT, to back up their data, store their primary copies, or do compute.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We first met Linda at NAB in 2023 from Digital Bedrock. Linda, could you take a few minutes to introduce yourself and share what inspired you to launch Digital Bedrock and what problem were you trying to solve?
Okay, so I'm Linda Taj, and I'm the founder and CEO of Digital Bedrock, and what we are is a managed digital preservation service provider. So it's not just storage, but it's all of that forensic analysis we have to do of the files before it ultimately then goes into storage. And we specifically use LTO data tape offline storage, which I'll get into more during the whole call. But why I started this was because of two things. One is, since the first Earth Day in 1970, when I was 10 years old, so I just dated myself, and I organized a march around my elementary school for Earth Day. This has been an important part of my own personal DNA to help protect the planet. So when I founded Digital Bedrock, it was because I saw, as Doreen said in her announcement or introduction, there's a lot of data that's out there. Not all of it has to be in the cloud, not all of it has to be accessed always. And there are organizations that are struggling with how to do that storage, the digital preservation, to manage the files. So I developed Digital Bedrock so that we could help people do that digital preservation work in a sustainable way. So sustainability has been a pillar of Digital Bedrock ever since the founding.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. Thomas and Graph Energy Tech, we met in the Swiss Pavilion at CES this year. If you could take a few minutes and introduce yourself and what inspired you to launch Graph Energy Tech and what problem were you trying to solve?
Yeah, thank you very much, Doreen. It's a pleasure to be here on this emission. So, Graph Energy Tech, myself first, maybe. I'm Thomas, I'm the CEO of Graph Energy Tech. And so we are actually in the clean tech area. We are a hardware startup company. And what we are actually doing, we are developing highly conductive carbon electrodes. And so until now, we've been discussing about data and so all the energy that is associated with all the data that is out there nowadays. And what is best than solar in order to provide us with a clean way of energy, right? So what we are doing, we are developing our carbon-based electrodes to replace the metal electrodes that are used in solar panels. Because I guess nobody knows about that, but currently solar panels use silver as the electrode technology. And this is an issue for two things. First of all, the silver is expensive, as we all know, and it's getting more and more expensive. So it's really putting the whole solar manufacturing to a risk because of the cost. But also, very importantly, all these metals are actually very energy intensive to extract from the earth crust, meaning metal electrodes are highly pollutive. So we have found a way to make carbon, so not a metal, right? Conductive enough to replace the metal electrodes in energy related applications, cutting both costs by 87% and CO2 emission by 97%.
Intelligent, pretty exciting. Have an amazing panel. Thank you so much. That's pretty interesting. So Margaux, we met Margaux also at the Swiss Pavilion at CES this year, and we also had her on our Founders Panel in March. Margaux, would you like to introduce yourself and share what inspired you to launch Enerdrape and what problem were you trying to solve?
Yeah, sure. Thank you again for the invitation. So my name is Margaux Peltier. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Enerdrape. Enerdrape is the Swiss company as well, and we have developed a way to basically leverage underground heat, but without any drilling. So that's really a big disruption in the geothermal sector. And the idea behind is that we have a lot of infrastructures, a lot of spaces that actually have the potential to capture heat from underground, but we cannot do anything about it anymore because it's already built. So we found a way to, with our geothermal panel, that is a non-invasive technology, to actually coat this kind of infrastructure, this kind of surface, so we can capture the heat and leverage it for renewable heating and cooling in buildings. So the main advantage is that it's really a no-brainer that we bring to the geothermal markets, specifically for urban and dense area where basically they lack a lot of access to renewable energy sources. They can't drill, they don't have enough capacity with traditional technologies. So we really provide an additional piece to the puzzle that I believe is going to be key for the energy transition of our cities and our society.
I can't tell you how many times I've been in the room, obviously at the CTO for Global Expansion and my sabbatical, and we're trying to figure out where you can put a data center. And the large part of the question always is not just the networking capability, but the energy profile obtainable by the site and how it's going to impact your entire fleet. So anytime you can add an extra tool to the box, that's exciting. Thank you so much. So now we'd like to dive into how do your technologies contribute to achieving net zero emissions. Obviously, at the end of the day, that's what we want to do, is one of the things we want to achieve. So Linda, would you like to dive in and attack this first?
Okay, so as I mentioned in the intro, yes, we process data, but then what we do is we write it offline to 3 copies of LTO data tape, because one of the concerns with the environment and digital preservation, all this data that we're storing, is not just the electricity use. And I'm really excited also to hear from Margaux and Thomas about your technologies. This is really, really exciting what you're all doing. But because of all that e-waste that's being created by using all the hard drives, the spinning disks, the solid state drives, LTO data tape is the least, as far as the LCA, the life cycle assessment goes, for creating the media, the storage media, and for using it, that has the least carbon emissions of all of them. And it also requires the least of the rare earth materials, that are required to develop all of this storage. So all this e-waste, there is so much data in the world. Only 80% of that data is estimated where it has to be immediately accessible. A lot of it's just archival data. Why does it have to be on the spinning disk where there's going to be e-waste and just going to landfills? I just actually wrote a paper over the weekend. I had to submit it on the impact of e-waste, on the environment, and different strategies and approaches to try to limit that e-waste. And so basically, and I'm also very interested, Thomas, in what you're going to be talking about, because if people can use solar, more sustainable solar panels, solar energy to power these data centers that are out there. That's going to be such a big, impact, on how data centers are developed and how they use electricity. So I'm going off on somebody else's presentation, but basically how we help it is by storing everything on LTO. And then we wipe the data off our servers. Data comes in, is processed, it goes out, it's wiped. We loan hard drives to clients to send data to us if they decide to send data that way. We then wipe the drives, according to Department of Defense protocols, so that those can all be reused, so that we don't have to shred anything or destroy anything. So those are some of the ways how we are, the company is helping our clients then to lower their Scope 3 emissions, by using our services to then help them to preserve, to take care of their data over time.
Excellent. 80% doesn't even need to be online quick. Wow, that's a pretty big percentage. Colby, would you like to share in terms of how Storj is working to contribute to net zero?
Absolutely. So Linda just talked about the difference between tape and hard disks. So we have, there are times, like you said, there are situations where you want immediate access to your storage. And so we have a solution that helps in those instances. We can help reduce the carbon impact by up to 80% if you store it in the cloud. So how do we do that? We basically are similar to Airbnb and an Uber meets data storage. We took an approach similar to that by utilizing the extra storage space and compute that's in the market. There's about 40% of the storage out there in the industry that's unused, just empty drives. A lot of those drives are connected to the internet, they're connected to electricity, they're already spinning. And so we found an approach to connect the disparate drives all over the world using our software to connect them together to make it feel to the customer like it's a data center, a network of data centers. We use existing hardware, right? And so if you can utilize existing hardware, it kind of feels like recycling. You don't have to build extra hardware, kind of the e-waste that Linda was talking about. It also extends the hardware life because the customers can just keep using, we store the data and we just use the hard drives until they fail. The customer's data isn't lost in that because we've used a technology that spreads it across different hard drives. Because we spread it across 20,000 locations all over the world, customers don't need to store extra copies of their data in different regions, because if a region goes down, customers can still access their data because of the approach that we used to store their data. And then because of this approach, less data centers are needed, right? Because we're utilizing the existing data centers and the extra space that they have in the data centers. Our approach also utilizes storage space outside of data centers. So in businesses' NAS devices, even in consumers' homes, so that we can take an approach that doesn't require building more and more data centers. We use the existing data storage that's already available out there, and it allows us to provide a solution that on the back end is completely different. It's this kind of distributed, decentralized approach, but then on the front end, you have the same experience you would with a major cloud provider. So it's super easy to adopt and use. And I think it's really unique that it allows the customers to adopt a green technology that can reduce the carbon footprint by 80%, but also allow them to save up to 80% as well on their storage costs.
We like to save, definitely, and using things that are already available, always a bonus. Margaux, would you like to share how your technology assists in contributing to the net zero?
Yeah, sure. So basically, we are decarbonizing existing fossil-based heating and cooling system, mostly by providing a new source that is very constant throughout the year. So we have really higher performance than conventional heat pumps, and more importantly, we just increase the availability of renewable energy share on a specific square meter, a specific area, which is one of the biggest challenge that our clients have today. Another aspect as well, if we take the example of data center, I was working on underground data centers because data centers, of course, they are a big problem today in terms of energy use, but they are also a producer of heating, for example. And most of the electricity that is actually used in data centers is not necessarily for the IT, is actually for cooling down the temperature there. So I think they could be, there's also a way such as by using our technology where we can like transform this problem into an opportunity, because for example you can really change data centers into what we say prosumers. They are not only consumers of energy, they can actually be producers of heat for others. And for example, if we think of building a data center on the ground, or not necessarily on the ground, but in a city center or close to a city or close to potential consumers, we can actually use this extra heat through a network to actually provide and to others this heat. And there we can really meet net zero for data centers, for example. So I think through this kind of ways of conceptualizing the source and the need of heat or cool through our technology, we can really provide additional tools, additional keys for the solution.
I love it, turning the heat of the data center into an asset for power. Love that. Thank you so much. And Thomas, let us know how your technology, I know he shared a bit in terms of net zero. Seems like there's a couple angles for you.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. So I think for us, it's actually two things mainly. The first one, by bringing this electrode technology to the solar manufacturers, you are simply fostering the further development of solar deployment. So I mean, just enabling the continuation of, I would say, affordable solar panels. So that's definitely a good thing to come up with renewable energy sources. And then when we dig a bit more into the meat of that, so by developing this conductive carbon technology, currently, okay, we are working only for solar, but we have potential in many other applications down the line. So more or less anywhere where you need an electrode, you could think that our carbon technology could be used. So I think on the long way, our electrode technology could replace lots of metallic electrodes. And we know that these metallic electrodes are really, but I mean, you don't see it actually, but it's generating tons of greenhouse gases emissions because of the metal extraction processes, which are really pollutive. And so I think there, just in general, switching from metals to carbon electrodes would save tons of CO2 and then really bring us closer to the net zero targets.
Exciting stuff. I told you it's going to be a great panel with some exciting new technology that you may not have heard of before. So thank you, Thomas. That's truly fascinating. I think we had covered about what makes the technology different from existing technologies. So let's dive into the use cases. Would you like to go first, Thomas?
Yeah, definitely. So just 1 second, sorry.
Yeah, the use cases for leveraging your solution and how is it available in the marketplace?
Yeah, so
and I know I saw other exhibits at CES using your technology. So.
Yeah, right. So the use cases so far, as I was saying, we are limiting ourselves to solar. I mean, we are a pretty small company yet, right? So we are really developing the technology to replace silver in solar because of two things. We believe that's the biggest market for us at the moment, and also because we have some background in solar. So would it be myself as the CEO and founder, but also some of my colleagues, we have this education in solar. So currently that's where we are active and that's where we are deploying the technology. And we are now initiating some early trials in battery, in supercapacitors, and also in printed electronics. So that's where we are at the moment. And our solution is available on, I'll say that, we don't have a market place really where you can yet purchase our technology. We just finalized the first version of our product. So if you want some, please just write to us. That's it. So we work still on a very small scale, I have to admit.
Got it. So solar is the main target, but as I saw personally and up close, and we shared with all of our viewers and clients, You also working on printed. We saw some 3D printed and some other for IoT solutions, and pretty much anywhere you need power. You're an option.
Exactly. So we are an electrode technology. Electrodes are everywhere. So the potential is huge. Yeah, that's correct.
Good. And Margaux, what use cases for your technology? I know you had mentioned the data centers and city centers. Is that the primary place where it's available in the marketplace in the solutions?
No, actually, we are primarily available for buildings, really at the building scale. So we install basically in parking garages or underground spaces. That could be basement as well. That's really our primary market. So we actually develop decarbonized system for building owners. That could be institutional, that could be cities, that could be real estate funds, asset managers, or any kind of building owners, basically. And now we are more and more moving to a more global city scale or neighborhood scale approach, where we will provide really heat at a larger level by actually implementing the technology in larger infrastructures. So that could be underground tunnels, urban tunnels, underground technical tunnels. For example, I'm thinking of New York. They have these large steam tunnels that are really rolling across all the city. That could be some kind of use case that we develop at very larger scale. So that's not what we do yet, but that's the vision and the ambition.
We got the Vegas loop here. Just saying.
Exactly.
Underground tunnels and expanding, and we're very into green, so you definitely want to hit up the city of Las Vegas for that. Exciting. And Linda, what type of use cases are leveraging your solution, and how is it available in the marketplace?
Well, the people so again, we have not developed our own technology hardware. However, we've developed our own software, and the software then is what can process all the data that goes through and does that analysis. So the people who use this, they're people, and as I say people, but because they are people that we work with, but it's different types of organizations. It's everybody from museums who have artworks that are digital artworks that they can spend a lot of money on as they would a painting or a sculpture, but they have a difficulty in preserving it themselves. We work with media and entertainment companies. We work with university archives. We work with individual artists. We work with orchestras, with theater groups. So an individual. So basically anybody who has digital content, they could use our services, because it helps them to save not only their own time by having us do that work for them, but then it also then helps their sustainability. You know, if they want to try to lower their scope 3 emissions, then they can use us to do all of that work and to store everything offline. And because we use our software that processes the data, then that can be a lot faster than them trying to hire people to do their own infrastructure internally in-house. So it's kind of an efficiencies of scale as well as human efficiencies.
For anyone that has content.
Yeah.
Excellent. Great marketplace. And Colby, what about you? What use cases leverage your solution? How is it available in the market?
I have a pretty similar answer. Is anyone that wants to store data, that wants quick access to it, or wants to do compute. So we target AI companies or enterprises that are doing AI workloads. Another major use of this are studios. So whether they're wanting to edit in the cloud or archive their content or are trying to stream it to their customers, all three of those can be used, can use our product to do that. And then enterprises doing their IT backup of their data. Our product is also super easy to access. So anybody can go to storj.io and our website and can sign up, and within minutes you could reserve a H100 GPU or can set up a storage account and start using it. So super easy to access.
Excellent. With any particular partnerships that were most helpful for you?
We do have a partnership with Veeam, so it's a big backup provider, and a lot of the major other providers. TrueNAS is another big provider of ours as well for the enterprise IT space.
Very good. And Linda, did you have any partnerships that were particularly helpful in advancing your technologies?
Well, for us, it's more a matter of not who we partner with, actually in doing our workflow, but more like really being in constant communication with the people who develop LTO technology, whether it's IBM that makes the drives, or it's whether like Fuji or Sony that makes the tape stock that's used. Also talking about not just like the hardware, the physical stuff, but how is data then written to those tapes? In digital preservation, it cannot be nothing can be proprietary. It has to be open. So people who use proprietary ways to write the data to the tape for even on spinning disk, that's not allowed in digital preservation. So basically to keep in communication with all of the folks who develop the technologies that we use, just to really encourage them to try to make it to be as open as possible and sustainable as possible.
Yeah, I can understand if you use a proprietary method, that proprietary method may not be available at some time in the future when you go to get the archive. So you're like, what did I do? I just locked it up where no one can get it and threw away the key.
Exactly. We experience that constantly with our clients who have written their stuff to older hard drives where you have to have a specific kind of operating system to get it off, or data tape where it was written in some proprietary system that no longer exists. So we have to become hackers in a way to get the data off, to get it alive, and bring it back to life, and then preserve it into the future. So it's open, so nobody can get mad at Digital Bedrock in the future that we did something proprietary back 50 years before, when they're trying to get their data off. So we're always, as archivists, you're thinking about what happened 400 years ago, 600 years ago, and thinking about the people, hopefully there will be people 400 years, 600 years from now. How will they access the data being created now?
Yeah, I guess when you're constantly interfacing with the work of others that are no longer amongst us, it makes you own the fact that there are going to be people working on what you're creating that long after you're here. So that context is probably very valuable for you. Margaux, what partnerships have been really helpful for you in your launch?
So for us, we did some kind of partnership with a client. One of our first potential client, we really managed to convince them, and they really help us out to better understand the USB, but most importantly to actually install at a small scale and in a non-risky way for them our solution. So we, thanks to this first pilot installation, we have been able to actually convince our very first client based on this data and this partnership. And this partner actually become one of our clients afterwards. So we kind of convert him. Something that's in more at a later stage, but which is still very critical for us, and where we manage to build very strong partnership is really for the installation. We are bringing a hardware, so you have to install. There is a lot of heating, let's say, competencies to have. And we did not pretend that we were smarter than the others in that sense, and we didn't want it to stoop into the market and the business of others. So since the beginning, we really work a lot and partner a lot with installers, HVAC contractors, to try to learn from them and their experience, and to give them the possibility to actually build a new segment and build a new market thanks to our technology. And this partnership was really key because I think specifically when you are a young company, your startups, a lot of people are trying to push you to, keep the value at the maximum and do not partner and do everything on your own. We could have done that, but it will have delayed a lot our penetration of the market. And thanks to this really partnership that we did with the technicians from the beginning, it really increased a lot the adoption of the technology.
It's important to know the difference of when it's great to partnership, and it seems like that might have helped. Was that helpful in assisting the scaling of the solution as well, or how did you scale your solution? Seems like that partnership might have been quite critical.
Yeah. So at first it was really, we had several stages. At the beginning, we actually modify a little bit the product development based on their own experience. For example, we really partner from the beginning with them, and they were saying, in theory you do this, but in practice, you don't do this and that when you, I don't know, you screw this type of drills into the concrete. It's not working properly. We actually do this way or that way. So that's really technical stuff that I was not aware of because I never been in this industry. I mean, really doing it from scratch. So first, we partner a lot, and we had a lot of back and forth, and they actually help us to develop a better, or let's say more easy to install technology based on their feedback. The second step was actually on the methodology to install. They really bring us a lot of value because we have been able to change. I mean, it's very, very basic stuff, but by changing a screw, we actually cut by half the time of the installation. By changing one screw. I mean, that's completely crazy, right? But for me, it was a screw. A screw is a screw, and just by changing it, they could use the same tools. They could do it in one step instead of two, and it changed drastically the time of installation. So this type of learnings we had from them were very critical at the beginning when we were doing the product design, and now for sure, now it's more, I would say, basic partnerships, talking about volumes, how you scale, how you cut down the costs because you actually bring more volume. So now it's more, I would say, traditional kind of partnerships about costs, volumes, and how you scale it. But at the beginning, that was actually very key for us.
Absolutely. Knowing the context of everything, and now you can advertise use the same screws. You don't have to change it at all. And everyone go, wow, it makes all the difference in the world for every product. If someone understands the true context of how it's going to be used. So that's fantastic that you took the time, formed the right partnership, and got the right insight. Thomas, what was the biggest challenge you faced in scaling? And how are you addressing it?
Yeah, so I think really the biggest challenge is for me, developing this conductive carbon electrode for solar is to provide the solar industry with something that won't disrupt their whole manufacturing processes, So currently, what they are actually doing in the solar industry, they are using silver inks that they can screen print on top of the solar cells to make the electrode. So we really had to work very hard in order to provide solar manufacturers with a conductive carbon-based ink, which properties were really matching the properties of the silver inks that they were using. So it means really making sure they don't need to completely change their production line. And that's something which was really not so straightforward at first, because carbon is totally different than silver. We were initially working on much more diluted paste, if you want, or less viscous paste compared to the silver ones. And so we had to work hard to make our product really matching the properties of silver inks. But I think on that, I totally agree with Margaux's comment. There is nothing better than actually partnering with a company that could be your customer, because they know what they need, right? And there are many small examples, such as, for instance, this very interesting screw example that Margaux just mentioned. Things you don't think about, that when you actually talk with the end user, you realize, that some considerations that you overlooked so far. So for us, I think that was the key, really, developing these inks with similar properties. And the most difficult point for us was to maintain the very high conductivity of our product, because having a carbon material that is conductive enough to be applied to solar is not obvious. It would have been done already if it was so obvious, right? And so by changing the ink viscosity, we were changing all the parameters, so mainly the conductivity, but also simply the adherence on top of the solar cells. So we had to do quite some research around the chemistry of our paste, so around the formulations. And so this, I think, was the big difficulty.
I can imagine you have quite a few patents in and around there too.
Yeah, definitely. That's the good things about it, definitely. We get lots of IP.
Absolutely. That definitely would have been, because you want to slip into how things are working so that you're inside the box. People always say think outside the box, but outside the box fundamentally is not accepted. You never want to be outside the box. You just want to show them the box is bigger than they thought. You can use the same processes you're using, but use something significantly better for the earth. Love it. Great job. And Linda, what was your challenge that you faced in scaling your solution, and how did you address it?
Well, as far as our core infrastructure, I mean, we developed it from the very beginning that it could just scale out. As we grow, we just keep adding more, servers to process more tape robots, making the software, be able to grow with all the 50 million files that we have in this database right now with all the technical metadata pulled out. So that's easy. We know that's going to be expected. So what we have to anticipate though for the future is what's a technology that underlies us could change. So for example, right now, as I was mentioning the last time I spoke about how it's very important with archiving and preservation to use open ways of writing data. So LTFS is the way that we use to write the data. It's a very open system. Somebody could take a tape that we write, put in another one, no problem. But as the LTO tape data capacity extends and grows over time, if there's more data that's on a tape that can be put onto the tape, and so that tape formulation has to change as well, then there's already some of rumblings in the in the community that LTFS might not be able to work on those larger tapes, which means people might be having to go to object storage on tape, which is a very interesting concept. And some people are already developing tape robots to be able to do object storage on tape. But that is a problem in digital preservation because object storage by necessity has to be proprietary in how it's written, all the cloud storage. That's why it's so hard to get your data out. You have to download it all and then put it into another cloud storage provider. Maybe Colby can talk about this a bit more, but how are you going to do that on tape? So again, we have to do it in an open way for digital preservation, that people would be able to read it in some other system, not just digital bedrock system. That's really critical. So we have to keep an eye on that for scaling out in the future, thinking ahead, having to be ahead of the curve in that sense, so we can anticipate it and be ready for when that happens.
Interesting. Yeah, because the whole tech stack that you're using, you want to make sure is something that's going to be available when they go to get the archives. Yeah. So you definitely need a significantly longer view than is ever taken in the technology sector. So.
Exactly. And so one thing just to make that point really clear is it's very important to have a really clean exit strategy. So that's what I tell clients and potential clients is it's really easy to exit us because everything's done in such an open way. And so if the technology in the future is where it might be harder to exit us, we don't want to do that. It has to be easy to leave us if you want to go to somebody else.
Interestingly, the exit strategy is a part of every architecture I've ever designed. You always have to go, well, what if you want to change your mind and undo it? Or, how stuck are you? Or vendor lock-in? All these are questions that everyone concerns themselves with. But I don't think we have that issue with Margaux and Thomas's technology. So this I didn't let you know in advance, but I was going to say, Margaux and Thomas, what were the most exciting things that you're looking for in the next 5 years with your tech?
So yeah, I can start. So for me, I'm still at an early stage. So the most exciting thing I'm looking for is really to see large-scale solar manufacturers adopting my electrode technology on their panels. So far, we've been partnering with startups because they are actually keener to look at new things and to implement changes in their products compared to the giants who are doing the same thing for decades already. So, that's great. I think we are in a good position so far, but seeing really, at larger scale, my technology being adopted by these big players, I would be very, very proud, I think, of myself and of the whole company. So this is really, I would say, one thing.
I think when we can move to a time when the dominant solar panel is not silver-based, we'll be excited.
Definitely,
because I'm sure 99% is today. So
yeah, exactly.
I look forward to seeing that margin change. That'll be definitely exciting.
So do
and Margaux, what's your hope in the next 5 years?
For us, I guess it would be to, if I do the junction with solar panels, one of our goal and the ambition is really with Enerdrape to bring a new standard to the market. I mean, today, even though there is still a lot to do with solar, when you think about a roof on the building, you think about solar. You don't know if it's the right way, if it's what's the potential, but still you have this connection that you do in your mind that is quite instant. My goal in the next 5 years is that in 5 years you see you are in you park your car in your underground car park, or you're waiting for your metro to come in New York or whatever it is. You think about Enerdrape and you see walls, underground walls, and you see geothermal panels. And I think that's really the vision and the ambition we have. And to do this, we need exciting partners, large partners that are able to scale very rapidly and at a very large scale the technology. And we also need exciting and like-minded people to invest in the company, so we actually are able to scale the tech internationally.
Excellent. I think we all look forward to finding a parking garage where we see that in there.
You can call
along with an open parking space, right? Because let's be honest, when they have the big basement garages, they're also very crowded garages. So an open parking space and an Enerdrape panel will be exciting. Let's go into the data set size. So Colby and Linda, who'd like to jump in just so we have a context in terms of what's the size data sets have leveraged your solution?
I better go first because Linda probably works with massive data sets. So we have some customers like Vivint, a smart home company. They are a security company, so they're storing the video clips from security cameras that are in consumers' homes. So have millions of customers with millions of cameras, and they need those cameras record clips anytime they detect motion. So all day long, you're sending clips to the cloud, and usually you store those for 30 to 60 days. And that takes tens of petabytes of data that needs to be uploaded every month. So a huge amount of data that needs to be uploaded. And then customers need to be able to just randomly see a clip, click on it, and see that clip, right? So they need to be able to be downloaded quickly as well. So that's one of the bigger use cases that we have for our technology.
Admittedly, at ISC West, we saw a lot of that video surveillance technology. And by the way, there's also a lot of the remote video surveillance technology that has a solar panel along with it. So I was definitely thinking of y'all when I was there. Linda, what's the largest data set that you have leveraged with your solution?
Well, it can be, I want to say rather than just like the largest data set, but it's more like the variety of sizes of data that we can get. So we can, again, we are supporting other clients' data, as Colby is supporting other folks' data. So we can have somebody who says, like, I only have like 100 gigabytes of data that I want you all to preserve. And that's small, comparatively, but it's very important to them. And so we do that. We can have clients who have a petabyte or more of data, and, that's a large amount of data. We'll preserve that as well. Everybody gets the same amount of service. It doesn't really matter. The file sizes themselves, the biggest single file that we've ever received was just over 1 terabyte in size. And that was just a single file. And so we get a lot of that kind of data coming from media and entertainment for the most part, or artist works from museums, which can be very complex, or code-based works. So it's a wide variety of kinds of data rather than like a large data set, because we can support any size, really, the way it's structured. So anyway, so we do support petabytes and petabytes of data, but again, it's all stored offline, 3 different geographically distributed locations, literally locked away, and nobody can touch it, except for then we have all that data that we pulled out of the files, all that technical metadata that's really critical, so people know what their files are, how were they created, when were they created, what are all the technical characteristics of the files. That's in the database that people can then access. So it's not just the storage part, but it's all that information about the files that they have to know. And that helps them then to make their own like appraisal and retention policies, which again, this whole conversation is on Earth Day, and we're talking about the environment. People don't know what they need to know about what they have, so they can determine, we don't need to preserve that, we don't really need it, which then helps the environment by not having to store that amount of data or take care of it in the future.
Absolutely. Very interesting. And that's helpful too. I appreciate you sharing in terms of the variety of data sets, because from coming from large enterprises, when you see something, it's always helpful to know, but will it apply to me? And so I appreciate you sharing, because obviously you've worked with large enterprises, so it applies. What about any latency effects? Colby, do you want to jump in on that one first?
Sure. Over the years, that's something that we really worked on. When we initially started, people felt like that can't work. It's distributed globally on all these different locations. It's got to really hurt the latency. But we've seen instances where it's now measured in milliseconds. So it might be 40 milliseconds faster or slower than a traditional cloud service. But most applications don't require it to be super fast on latency, at least that fast. So any backup applications and others, 50 milliseconds is plenty fast. And we actually more than make up for it through throughput. So your ability to download a content, we're actually 2 to 3 times faster in downloading data across the globe than some of the largest cloud storage providers. So in that case,
that's exciting.
So that makes use cases like global collaboration really important. So you upload your data in one place, and then you can be across the globe and download it, and it'll be just as fast as it is when it was uploaded in across the globe.
Just the ways people like it. Linda, what about you for your solution in terms of access when they do go to get it? Obviously, with archives, people have a different expectation, right?
Right. And so when I'm speaking with a potential client, I always tell them the negatives first and just remind them we're not a digital asset management system. We're not an online cloud, solution. We complement those solutions. People want to have access, that's fine, but they know that we're their insurance policy. We're taking care of their data offline. So I guess in talking about latency, then that would be a comparison between us and say like the cold cloud storage, like just say, for example, Amazon Glacier Deep, because that's all on tape, also. But we are actually, so when people do request files from us, we're actually faster than getting it from Amazon Glacier Deep, because you're actually working with a human being. And because we are so detailed in what we're doing, once people go through the security protocols to know, yep, you are authorized to request data from us, we know exactly what tape is stored on, exactly. Even if somebody is like a code-based work, because we're pulling out all the information about each of the individual files that goes into code. We can just pull that tape off, restore it, and then send it to them electronically if they want it. So again, and of course, then because you're also working with the preservation system, it's not like we're just pulling it off and sending it. We're verifying that file is still okay. We're verifying the checksum of that file, the hash of it, before it's sent out, to the client to retrieve, and download. So anyway, so the latency, again, is faster than what a cloud provider would do for cold storage, but it's also even more than that, because again, we're verifying the file is okay.
Very nice. And hey, faster than Amazon means that they got to complain to them before they come to you. You had mentioned the security and privacy. Admittedly, that's something that is very important to me. It was one of the things when I was at NAB, it was amazing the number of solutions that it wasn't necessarily apparent what they were doing for identity and access management or any type of security and privacy. So would you like to share in terms of how your solution handles that?
I mean, for us, the fact that the data is stored 3 copies on tape, and there are literally 1 copy is kept in an office in a data center, 2 levels below ground that nobody can get to in a 2-ton safe. And so nobody can get to that unless they know the combination, and they can get into the data center. The other 2 locations are where the tapes are them. And again, people's data, only their data is on their tape. It's not mixed in with anybody else's data. We lock them in these turtle cases, which are like a Pelican case, with a combination lock. Those are then locked into vaults that nobody can touch except for us. And they're in 3 different locations around the country. So if anybody wants to get access to that data, and then of course it's online on our servers for a brief period of time, but we own our own servers. We're not using the cloud at all. I mean, no offense to cloud, it has its purposes, but we aren't. And so basically it's then wiped. So we have to be very careful with our cybersecurity. The data's offline, locked away, nobody can touch it. But we also don't then integrate with any other system, which can be a point of I don't know, like frustration for some clients who want us to integrate with their dam system or another system. We say, no, we don't. Because the moment you integrate with anybody else, there's an opportunity for somebody to come in through a back door, no matter how careful you are. So we're really standalone. We're very locked system. And so that's how we're able to promise security, to our clients.
Are you predominantly available in the US then?
Well, we're US based, but we could receive data from anybody in the world. And actually, we were talking to some folks like in Southeast Asia or in Europe or in Africa. As long as we can get the data to us and people can send us data electronically, it doesn't have to come on media. We'll do the work here. And then we can store it still in the US, or if they want their own copies, we could ship, data tapes back to them to store wherever they want to do. We manage a copy locally. So yes, we're talking about going into other regions, other outside the US, but right now we're just in the US.
I was thinking with Europe and GDPR, you almost need the multiple facilities in Europe to truly serve Europe.
Well, we actually went through there's a program with the US Department of Commerce, which has agreements with the EU equivalents there so that we can receive European data from Europe, around the GDPR. And so we're actually authorized to do that now.
Very good information. And Colby, what about for your solution? Because I know obviously when you get into data, that's always the big thing. So what can you share in terms of how you address it?
Yeah, and so we took a zero trust architecture with ours. We looked at a scenario where what if someone did get access to the drive that this data is stored on, right? And so first of all, the data has been encrypted. It's encrypted wherever it's stored, it's been encrypted. The customer also can own the encryption key. So even if we wanted to get to it, we can't because the customer owns the encryption key. Second of all is we erasure code. So that's basically breaking up the data into little pieces and then spreading that out across the network of 20,000 devices. So even if somebody gets access to the data, all they're going to see is numbers. And they're going to see those numbers. Now they need to match those numbers with other numbers across the 20,000 locations. So even if you hack one location, now you have to go hack 20,000 other locations to be able to assemble the data all together. So it really makes it just not probable, makes it really impossible to be able to do all those steps to try to assemble the data together. And then all the data, of course, because of that disbursement, it's not all in one location, so you can't just go to one place and find it all. So we take those three approaches to really just make it really impossible for customers to get access to data. Or sorry, not the customers, for anybody else besides the customer to get access to the data.
Understand completely. Closing remarks before we go to announcements. Thomas, you want to go first?
So I didn't prepare any closing remarks, but it's been a brilliant discussion. So thank you very much, Doreen, for the invitation. It's been a pleasure for me. And so, yeah, I'm very happy that I've met all of you and hopefully we can stay in touch. Thank you.
Excellent. Margaux, any closing comments?
Yeah, I think I can only follow up on what Thomas just mentioned. It was great to learn also a little more about how data and software can also participate to net zero and energy transition. I think we are very focused on hardware, so it's always very good and enlarging to see how others are playing in the scope. And yeah, thank you again for the invitation and happy to connect.
Excellent. Linda, any closing comments?
Just to reiterate what everybody has already said, okay. This has been fabulous. I mean, everybody here on this panel has been working to go towards net zero carbon emissions in whatever way we all are. It's all interconnected. We're all helping each other out. And so thank you. I'm glad to have met all of you.
Yeah, I found that in IT and, the electrical engineers and computer scientists, we're always working together because we can't exist without you, and we always work together when you go forward. So it helps. So Colby, any closing remarks before I go to announcements?
Yeah, the amazing thing, the stat I heard the other day was that the carbon impact of the cloud is larger than the commercial airline industry, and that kind of blew my mind, right? And you hear, everybody knows that that the airline industry is a big carbon impact, but they just don't talk about the cloud as much. So I really appreciate what you've done here to try to educate people on how they can help be greener with the way they use data.
Excellent. So on to announcements. At NAB, you may have recalled we covered Stephen A. Smith, where he spoke about being the highest paid sports analyst that wasn't a pro athlete, which raises the question, where are you getting your technology advice from? Are they the equivalent of a pro athlete? If they haven't played in the big leagues as an engineer in a big way, you might want to think about working with someone who is the equivalent of a pro athlete in engineering. So if you got a tough problem, become a client today. Same price as adding a seat on to Gartner or Forrester, except you actually get an engineer. We are also seeking corporate sponsors for our channel. Our viewers, subscribers are all engineers into technology one way or the other. And evidently, according to YouTube analytics, they do a lot of personal finance, buy a lot of cars, like rock and roll and sci-fi. So there you go. Conference Whispers Customer Connect Expo is out for fact check. So if we covered you there, get your facts back. It publishes at 5 p.m. tonight. Remember, the document is the script for the video edition. So be sure to get your facts in, even if you're running late, because it's always better to get it fixed before it goes into the video. Future industry whispers are being planned, so always watch the community channel for registration. That's under posts, as well as on LinkedIn and Facebook. Identiverse we will be covering in June. This has been Industry Whispers Earth Day Technology Panel, April 22nd, 2025. The answers are always in the whispers. Subscribe today. Have an amazing day. And thank you to all of our amazing panelists and contributors. And thank you, Vicki, for the wonderful introduction. Thank you.